everyone, and welcome to this newest edition of Men at Arms. This is Remlace from 40k Theories.
Hi everyone, this is Fiaura. We're having to record this again because I did something stupid.
Yes, she didn't call the tech priest, which is appropriate because today we're looking at the Adeptus Mechanicus. So we're going to kick things off by taking a look at Skitarii Warplate. Now, Skitarii Warplate is armor worn by, surprisingly enough, the Skitarii. These armored plates are designed to be worn for several years at a time. Secreted under a superdermal layer of ceramite alloy are recombinant cells that harness moisture from the water and recycle it. This liquid is transmuted into a gelatinous unguent that coats the inside of the suit, preventing the slow abrasion of the wearer's body, whilst affording a measure of protection from the harmful effects of their weapons.
I can honestly say that Skitarii Warplate is not overly vulnerable in terms of the initial look. The armor provides protective plating without using massive shoulder pads and covers the wearer from head to toe with only an eye slit and joints as the real vulnerable points. It's extremely similar to medieval knights or men-at-arms, but then you just have to add on a power pack for what they'd be wearing into combat. The problem, however, is it's really large and bulky, and when I looked at it and assumed 1/3 the weight of zero-gauge steel, the armor comes out to 300 kilograms with the specification of thickness provided by Games Workshop. You're literally carrying 3 or 4 persons on your body as body armor. This is stark contrast to the power armor that the Sororitas and Space Marines used, as well as the Flak and Carapace the Imperial Guard use. The armor is really good at stopping bullets, but don't expect your troops to move very fast or not be an obvious target, because it's kind of got this thing going where it weighs a lot more than Carapace, but it's not as heavy as power armor, and we're not quite sure it's powered or not.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to take a look at the arc rifle. Now, arc rifles are a common weapon used by the Skitarii, powered by permacapacitors that store energy from, quote, when the days when the Imperium was young. They discharge with a loud crack, firing a bolt of blue-white electricity that can fry a man's brain or overload a machine's circuits in seconds.
Firing bolts of electricity would seem like a weapon you'd want. I mean, you know we could build these, right? Like right now. Here's the issue with firing an electrical discharge. It's completely unpredictable what it's actually going to hit once the electrical discharge hits the air. A light blue electrical hue indicates we are dealing with an electrical charge equal to or greater than a natural lightning bolt. I have no issue believing we could actually build this weapon, and that you could inflict the same damage as a lightning bolt from a Class 4 Hurricane. We have a device called a Tesla coil, more than capable of generating lightning bolts in that manner. What I do have an issue with is you actually being able to hit what you aimed at. The Tesla coil, for example, when it unleashes a bolt of electricity, it goes towards the nearest conductible object. If I aim this at a tank, for instance, and a piece of machinery is between me and the tank, some random bits of debris from a tank that's already blown up, if you will, if that debris has any bit of metallic, magnetic, or conductive capabilities to it, the electrical bolt is going to go for it first and the tank second. Highly conductible objects or lightning rods, for instance, would make this weapon grossly ineffective. Something like an orc war boss's pole on his back could easily sit there and be shocked over and over and over again, and you'd still not kill the rest of the orcs. This is why we don't have an electrical attack weapon today. Too many pieces of metal on the battlefield simply make it impossible to accurately aim or use, much less avoid electrocuting your own friend who's in that Skitarii warplate who happens to be standing 2 feet away from you.
Next up, we have the Phosphor Blast Pistol. Now, the technology to produce these weapons has been lost to the Imperium, but surviving weapons are still utilised by the Skitarii forces. They're used to mark out high-priority targets on the battlefield, and if struck by the burning spheres fired by these weapons, the victim will find himself under fire from subsequent light-guided volleys.
Dear tech priests, I don't understand this, but how do you lose the technology for this?
In fairness, as the Imperium, they lost the technology on how to make a knife.
I mean, you make a good point. But, this isn't even, like, complicated. This isn't even as complicated as a knife. It's a chemical reaction from a naturally occurring element. Phosphorus. This is literally a gun that fires a constant stream of tracer rounds, a technology we've had since the American Civil War that was pioneered by Napoleon's cannon regiments to provide clear arcs of fire as to where the rounds were landing. This isn't complicated or hard to make. It's literally a basic chemical compound that we've known about for 150 plus years now. How? What? This weapon isn't even that special upon examination. If you pick them up, and sure enough, regular guns could use this special type of ammunition. I am more confused as to how you lost the ability to figure out that if you take a certain alite of phosphorus, it burns really bright when you heat it.
Maybe they got confused with thermite.
I have an honest question. If I asked the Adeptus Mechanicus to make a fire, would they look at me and say we must locate the STC?
Probably. It's the Adeptus Mechanicus. Everything is located from an STC.
Okay.
They probably need an STC to make stone axes. So,
I believe it.
moving on. The Cord Claw. Now, these are type of weapons, again, used by the Skitarii, but most infamously, Sicarii and Rust Stalkers. These weapons emit a constant, low, insistent buzz that makes stomachs turn, and when they strike armor, the weapons will adjust their hostile sonic field to match its own resonant frequency, quickly slicing through it.
Okay, who's ready for quantum and particle physics?
I know I am.
When we talk about resonant frequencies and things of a nature that involve matching frequencies in order to allow them to slice or penetrate, we're talking about molecular level. So for those who don't know, every single particle of every single thing that ever existed is actually moving, including you. While these things are moving, they have a resonance and frequency. In theory, if you match the frequency exactly, you'll pass through them effortlessly. This is why Vibro Blades work the way they do. Their vibrations are an effort to match the frequency of what they're cutting, or at least move the particles in a way that will help break apart whatever they're trying to cut apart. What a cord claw is trying to do is use its edge to change the frequency of vibration in any substance it touches in order to pass through without any resistance. In theory, and please remember, all of this theory requires metalurgy, acoustic science, and particle physics interacting with each other. This thing should be able to match the frequency of the objects it's cutting into and separate them as though the objects were being fooled into thinking that it was one of them already. Please note that even objects of the same material have slightly different resonances. This is why you can't push two desks into each other and they meld. But this weapon is attempting to replicate that. Oddly enough, this theory was actually first proposed by Bill Nye, yes, that Bill Nye, and then later expounded upon by several of his graduate students before it led to the development of actual experimental Vibro Blades that can currently be custom made by a few select blacksmiths.
That's awesome.
That is freaking amazing. Warhammer 40k, I have an actual thing that I can order online that you say exists in your universe as a weapon. I'm happy now.
And it's all thanks to Bill. Next up, the Galvanic Rifle. Now, Galvanic Rifles are the favoured weapon of Skitarii Rangers, modelled after the old flintlock guns of the past. These weapons fire specialised bullets over long distances that causes all potential energy of the target to burn out in a killing blast of electrical force.
Okay. To be honest, I don't really understand how this works, except for that I know a few basic elements of science that can come together to make it possible. Let me explain. Every single cell of our body stores potential energy. If it were to become active energy, also called kinetic energy, that's when our cells do work, i.e. producing more cells, telling your muscles to move, anything that involves the cells having to actually do something besides sit there inert. Now, if you were to make every single bit of stored energy release all at once, how much energy would that be? Well, we know that 1 kilocal, or calorie, converts to 4,184 joules, tongue twister there, of energy stored. We know that a pound of human body fat has 3,500 calories and then effectively to burn in the event that we have to have it. The average person is 6 feet tall, weighs about 170 pounds. Knowing all this information, we take it and convert it for purposes of determining just what would happen if we somehow had a device which could cause all the potential in a person to change in kinetic energy all at once, assuming they were 170 pounds of human body fat. The reason I assume fat is because it has the least potential energy in the body and it eliminates the need to account for body type, genetics, and variations upon the person in question, as well as eliminating the need for me to go through and individually calculate every single muscle group, tendon, bone, and organ in the body's potential energy. This means that if the imaginary person were somehow have all their potential energy released now, you would release roughly 2,498 megajoules of energy, which since joules is equal to newtons, that means that all we have to do is move the decimal point and discover that it would be 2.48 meganewtons of force. This is equivalent to about 3 sticks of dynamite. And I said meganewtons, not megatons. Which means that if you could, in some way, force the human body to release all of its stored energy all at once, you would get this from them. This would be about the result of them exploding. Roughly 3 sticks of dynamite, so you're going to wipe out about half a platoon. Exploding into lightning, however, is something I highly doubt. You need to build up the energy of the human body well beyond what our bodies are capable of generating to get a lightning bolt to fly out of our bodies. Remember the movie The Matrix that claimed that you could use humans as batteries?
Yeah, that's not really feasible.
The Adeptus Mechanicus guy is right for once. Yeah, no, it would not work. We generate less electricity than it takes to sustain our food for our bodies to eat, to generate that electricity. Furthermore, the creation of electricity requires friction, magnetism, and particles to come together in a way to generate an electrical shock. Take static electricity for once. You can get a friction buildup when you rub your feet across the carpet with a really, really fuzzy socks, right? Your body has a natural electrical and magnetic properties as well as your particles have a frequency under which they are under the effect of gravity, right? But do we generate enough electricity for more than a bad bruise? No. Our bodies simply were not built to generate large amounts of electricity. You cannot generate and contain that kind of electricity within our bodies in any way, shape, or form. And the big thing about getting them to explode in an electrical sparks shower would be that they would have to be able to contain the electricity in their body long enough for it to need to cause an explosion. Furthermore, this weapon goes into an error of physics because items like metal are not good conduits of electricity, and most of the electrical charge would pass right through them. As for activating the potential energy of metal particles have little to no potential energy, and most certainly not enough for them to explode without the explosion also pushing against their bulk. This is why reasons like science call things like steel inert. An inert substance has no potential energy nor any kinetic energy for which to speak of. It basically means that without any application of significant changes